Good morning, lads. This will probably be the first video for the Ichika, the S12. We got the LE5. It's an Ecotech motor from a Solstice. Sadly, we probably won't be able to size up any installs today just because I'll need to do the oil pan first. Didn't know it was cracked like that, but it had to have been when we got it. The car wasn't a front end accident, so that got hit up a bit. But we're gonna spray it down with some degreaser, finish removing the harness, and then size up our other harness. But the rat's nest, it should fit, and honestly we might be able to use the factory V6 engine mounts. This is the new oil pan, doesn't have a hole in the bottom. There's a surprisingly large number of bolts on all of these, and the original one is not using a gasket, so we're not going to either. And then the motors looks pretty good. There's no weird metal chunks or anything flown around, so I'm pretty sure that the damage really just came from the impact. And then this clutch does appear to have a little bit of oil down in the bell housing, so we'll address that when I drop the trans, because we're gonna have to replace that hydraulic cylinder to push in the clutch anyway, because the people who pulled this motor from the wrecked car just kind of cut the line, so we can't even salvage anything. Alrighty, we've done the oil pan, and now it's time to address the steering rack bushings. Before we put the motor in there, there's no reason not to just do it now. And I guess because there are so few of these cars, there's not really a direct aftermarket replacement. Unless these energy suspension pieces work. I'll put the part number below in the description if it works. When I bought the car, we had duct tape on the driver's side, and then what looks like coolant hoses that have been cut and fitted for the passenger side. And there's no real direct answer, at least that I've been able to find, other than that might be using Z31, the early 300ZX bushings. So those are the ones I ordered based on forums from like 2007. So we'll try those and see how they fit up. But it should be easy, just 2 bolts up top on that side, and then that side, and I should be able to pivot the steering rack up and then swap down below. The inside diameters do look to be the same if we lay them over, and this was after I unwrapped it from the duct tape, so this bushing looks promising. We should be able to put it back on. It's cool how it's got that teardrop shape to kind of keep it aligned. That's just because I rotated it to get it out. We'll slide this one on and slide the other one on and see how they do. They're on. I'm really happy with how the teardrop came in, and I ended up using the thicker of the two circles that were provided. I will throw this in the rare and disperse pile. And that was the 7.10104G. There's a little gap on the teardrop on the other side, but I made sure to put most of the bushing face down when I slid it in. This one, there is a little gap as well on the other side, but I'm really happy with how they felt going down. You know, there's a little bit of squish, not anything loose or anything. So that's step one before the motor in. Thankfully, somebody already went through the learning experience. This is my quick mask job. But there's 3 outlets here to include the aftermarket water to air cooler for the supercharger, and somebody's already gone ahead and replaced this after, I'm guessing, they learned about it, because this was sprayed the horrible color that this was. So I just went ahead and gave it a little quick hose down. But in regards to the motor, we're here. I'm not sure if this is a gas strut or what's going on here, but this is going to go up at the front in the place of this alternator. I'm not sure if I have to use this one yet, but we're going to mount that so I can drop off this intake and this fuel rail and get the new stuff installed. The S12 is getting more love today. I know it's been a couple months. My bad. I'm going to try to stay on top of it. This is a different fuel cell project for Pepsi, but with the Ecotech, we got clutch, slave cylinder, flywheel, and we're going to see if we can get this trans back together, adapt it to an AN line, and maybe get her sized up in the car. We'll see, but either way it's going down, because last time we got all the bushings done, so really there's no reason I can't drop this here. That I can deal with later, and the belt setup I think I figured out. Transmission, engine, hose down, purple power. I might paint the valve cover in the supercharger later, but this is the good old Chief rebuild, brand new, good to go. Cleaned up all the clutch dust, that way for future indications then I know. But it was pretty thick in there, so I'm glad we're just going ahead and doing it now. We got the flywheel bolts off, just wedged in a flathead against the teeth for the flywheel. And it looks like this thing hasn't been too beaten on. Installing the flywheel, all we did was switch the little flathead in the other direction. I did put a little bit of Loctite back on them. I did these to 65 foot-pounds You can do 65 or you can do 35 plus 25 degrees. 65 is the easiest. And we remarked them all, just double check everything. Plate, clutch installed. I did have a thing in there, but I took it out. I did these to 30 and that bolt didn't like it, and that bolt starter did not like it. So if it's 35, I'm not touching it. I'm happy with 30. I'm gonna flip the thermostat housing to go the other way to keep this hose from needing to be in the back of the car. I know this is here and I'll figure out a way to splice that in, but there's no reason for this to end up needing to go all the way around. Replacing the rain with aluminum dust. I did what I forgot to do and was off, and that was notch out the cross member point. If this is where it's going to sit, I want to be able to be as flush as possible, so dipped a cutoff wheel up, and then did it for the cross sections, and then dipped in as far as I could over that way, then that way again, and then that way. And there's the fourth row. Took some pliers, broke them off. So there's a bunch of the little walls, but just repeated that until it was about as flush as I could get. Pulling off the fuel rail, just 2 10 mils right there, and then just give it a little love. All 4 of our old injectors, they look good. I'll probably just resell the rail. That line was cut. And we got over the top performance. They have a fuel rail with seats for injectors. Some ZZP performance, good old fuel injectors. These are 80s, and that might be overkill, but I'm going for 350, 400, so we'll see how it holds. I know this Dash 8 is definitely overkill, but we have some adapters to Dash 6 that should do this just fine, and we'll get these installed. Fuel rail's gone, injectors are gone, but the fuel injector caps, the plastic versions of these, stayed in. Best way I got them was a 90 hook. Went in, popped it, and literally just pulled it out. That one was a little tight, so we used a flathead and did one side, the other side, one side, the other side. And we used some brake cleaner, got them all out. We're gonna use the spark plug boot protector, kind of grease some of these O-rings up before sliding them back in. That's what ZZP recommends, and it makes sense based on how stuck that one was. Fuel rail's on. I'm happy. I felt all the bottom seat hat, injector hats kind of pop into place. I did go with the 10 mils right here and right here, just for ease. If anything needs to get dealt with, I don't have to worry about pulling out Allens. But one firm push, both sides, everything slid in. I'm happy about it. This pulley's gonna need to get swapped out from the LE5 to the LSJ stuff, which is what the Supercharged came on the SS Cobalts. And this isn't gonna really apply to us because I'm not gonna be using a power steering pump that's belt driven. I'm gonna use one of the Volvo ones. But in regards to the alternator, supposedly you can run the LE5 stuff backwards and it's a little bit higher in the amperage. And I initially thought I needed hardware, but it turns out that all of these measurements are the exact same between the bolts. So really I need to figure out how this tensioner works. I thought this was a gas strut in an earlier clip, and it turns out to be a spring on the inside of this that nobody sells anymore. So that needs to get rebuilt. We'll address it then. And this piece ended up having the ZZP Performance belt tensioner. So instead of having to get a new belt every time you change pulley sizes, like I have those 2 pulleys that came with everything, you just need to push it down and switch the hole, if I can find it. There's like 3 preset holes that you can alternate from. Yeah, right here. There you go. So you can switch between all those. There's one right there, and one right there. So it's awesome that I had that bracket. I plan on getting it anyway. Last time we were working on the S12, we were about to get the trans back up to the motor after doing the clutch, and I had this horrible fitting that was labeled for this application, and it just didn't work for me. So we ended up getting the right one, as you can see, that matches, and we're about to get the slave cylinder back in and connect it back up to the engine. You'd be amazed what you can do with the jack and engine choice and a dream. Braided lines flung over, everything's together. I will note that you do need to take off the dust shield, hopefully it's not too bad, before you mount them back together, because it will catch on the flywheel if you start sandwiching everything together and it's not happy. But next is making the engine mounts. The rear end up. These wheels are 40 offset, by the way. Who would have guessed? I thought it'd be like 35 was the max, but 17x7s. And I guess I never went through the center console for this car. I asked the owner, I was like, hey man, you know, do you have the lock key? He didn't, wasn't a big deal. I ended up getting one with another set of lug nuts, but there's two of the same key in here. An extra lug nut, I'm guessing a cat toy. Interior trim pieces, matches, broken plugs, and I've never seen so many dead battery terminals. Where do you go? There's one, there's another one. There were two more. There's also these, which would be on the battery in hardware. So typical Nissan ownership in the good old S12. I believe for getting the center console out, it's just going to be that bolt, maybe one bolt you can access there, maybe the center piece comes out, and then it should be that one right there and one on the other side, and then it should pop out. But this does a whole lot of nothing for us. I was right about the screws to get that out, but this is kind of a self note for when I'm wondering why the neutral safety is on and ignition's not going. There's two wires right there, and there are four right here. Two plugs, hole's empty. Time to, you know, back to the engine bay. These AC lines are way too long. The AC compressor is kind of mounted in a weird spot on the VG. For the Ecotec, it's really just going to need to drop down to right up in this area. And then we are getting rid of the power steering because we're going to go with the Volvo pump. See if we can kind of just hook it straight up to the lines there. We'll see what it's like in the lines, but I'm going to remove the fuel reservoir, or the reservoir for it, and see if I can get that out of the way without disconnecting too many lines there. Power steering stuff is out. Turns out the power steering sensor that adjusts your RPM, I think it adds like 90 or 100 for when you're turning. That way you can keep up. It really makes that howl sound. It's like the eh. Got that out, marked it as the high on the low end because that's where that sensor is going to. So that way I have kind of a pinpoint. I got the fuel stuff out. Those lines I was considering keeping, but there is a lot of rust in them, and I already ordered the hard line. So if anything, I remove it. Just copy it. Now, now's the time. Next time I touch it, it's going in. Going in. So we've got the hoist. Getting the motor in was a little bit of a process. Had some help holding the trans. Shouts to sister. There's the mark right there for the indent, and then there's the steering column. So we have just a little bit more to go for the inside of the car. It's close, but it's coming up right there. So what I'm gonna do is likely just notch right here over and then go back up. That way the carpet still has this point to be connected, and should all be good, and you kind of see the line of where the trim is. The math that I did originally was pretty damn close. Here's the original Solstice mounts. There's the original V6, so it was only off by about an inch. That side's hitting, and then over here, this side is still up about half an inch, and then it's a little bit forward. But we do have room. I don't know if you can see that. The oil pan still isn't as far down as it can be. So I'm hoping that that clearance right here going on will help a lot. That's about an inch. That'll help. And then I was like, damn, we're gonna have to murder the hood. It's gonna look stupid. Nissan already has a little scoop going on, so she's in. I'm gonna drop the mounts and then see if we can get any further in. Another day on the S12. And in typical GM fashion, both of these engine mounts are the exact same. They just flip them for the side, so this little rib rides on this side, and then if you can see, if I can hold something, there's a little incline, so this is going to be the passenger side, and then it would flip and it would be the driver's side to even it out. So instead of making motor mounts, because the cross member is too high anyway, I don't know if it's gonna cooperate, but cross member is right there. We're gonna cut out the cross member and just make mounts that come out, and these studs are super long, but hopefully it should be easy to just make a landing zone for them and weld them up to the cross member. I feel bad cutting up a V6 cross member for these cars because they're pretty hard to come by, but nobody should be using the VG30. Not a fan. We ground down the back half of the brackets for the original mounts, and I left the front so I have something to weld to. I did this for both sides. I'm gonna cut these, have them sandwiched with the engine mounts, so I know kind of where it needs to sit, but currently there's a lip along the bottom of the crossmember that the oil pan's actually hitting. Everything power steering wise is clearing, but that right there needs to go. Got the left and right motor mounts from the crossmember cut up. I'm pretty happy with how similar they are. That one's still flaming hot, but all we got to do now, found a bolt for that original motor mount, is slide the hole in. Oh, it's backwards. There we go. Put it on there, and then that's where we're going to be welding. We've got the motor in an easy situation to get in and out. You can see on the shifter mechanism, because this transmission was out of a Solstice, it's right here. Usually on the Colorados and stuff, it's a lot farther back or forward. But this is rubbing on our tunnel, so we are going to not nicely ask it to open right up with this boy right here. Got this mount set, sprayed with some black just to keep it from rusting. If I ever drop the crossmember, I'll do it all in one color. And then we also got this side going. And it makes sense that my measurements were a little bit off because I only did one side stupidly. But this was the side that was the closest, and you can tell kind of this mount comes a bit farther back than this mount over here, which is definitely a lot more forward. So that's why that one had to get turned sideways and then pulled up to the front, but it's good to go in. And then I just got to make the crossmember for the transmission. Last step for having the motor officially in is making this crossmember. This is the automatic transmission crossmember from the S12, and it has these massive weights on both ends. This piece is probably 10-15 pounds, and we're just going to see if we can adapt it. First, we're cutting these off. I believe they're there for vibration canceling. It just kind of keeps everything from rattling a little bit. We don't need that where we're going. I ended up cutting these off. They were 2.5 pounds each, so 5 pounds of weight reduction. We got this crossmember made. I used two pieces of angle stock, welded the bottom, top, side, underside, sprayed it, and we're gonna get her in, and then I'll go over all the angles, kind of confirm everything's right, and the motor will be in. Motor's in by itself, both mounts. Jack is out from the transmission. The car is at a 1.6 degree incline. Got this angle finder here. We're at about 5.6, 5.3 minus the 1.5 puts us at right about 4 degrees. Most drag cars are like 0 to 3. Street cars are about 3 to 5. I believe this Ecotech motor from Pontiac calls for 3 to 5. And then for the angle going down on the passenger side, it calls for 10 degrees, which is a little extreme, but going off the top of the coil pack, we're at about 7. That should be fine, and Valvoline will make up for anything else. Used digital calipers to kind of just check a bunch of the face spots with different parts of the car to make sure it's actually in there straight. And that's the motor install. I hope the video wasn't too scattered. I've been doing it usually in the evenings after work, but progress. Next is fueling, cooling. We're gonna have to do something creative with the oil, and then the supercharger is gonna need some love.